As a big Watch Dogs fan, I was excited for Watch Dogs Legion. It was one of the few games in my life that I've ever pre-ordered. Legion is the first game in history where could play as everyone. However, after clocking 130 hours in the game, I realised it was far from what I expected. Watch Dogs Legion is the third game in the Watch Dogs franchise. You've probably heard of them, especially if you've been on my channel before. Watch Dogs is a bit of a guilty pleasure of mine. The first game burned people out because of the whole graphics thing. Putting that aside, I thought it was a decent game. Then 2 years later, Watch Dogs 2 came out, and it is honestly one of my favourite games of all time. It improved on every aspect of the first game and showed us what a Watch Dogs game could be. You would think because Watch Dogs 2 was so good, that Watch Dogs Legion could only get better. It's easily the worst game in the Watch Dogs franchise and manages to be worse than the first game that was released 6 years before it. So you probably know about the core gameplay mechanic of play as everyone.
All playable characters.
It was like the only thing they promoted when releasing the game. This was a ballsy move, I'm not gonna lie. No AAA game in history has let you play as every NPC you can see. For that, they get a gold star or something, I guess. Let's discuss how it actually turned out. You walk up to someone and you're like, hey, do you want to join my cult? And then they're like, sure, but first you have to do some nondescript hacking shit and then break into Buckingham Palace and take a nice fat fucking dump on the floor. And then you're like, sound mate, I'll do that, absolutely no bother. So then you do the task for them, probably takes about 10 to 15 minutes. The task usually pretty basic and nearly always is located at the Clan Kelly hideout in Camden. So after that you go back and you're like, sound mate, and they join. None of the interactions are how normal humans behave because it's all like computer generated and shit.
You're a dead sick, aren't you? Maybe you can help me.
I'll have a look at our schedule. What's wrong?
So there's a reputation system of sorts. When you think of reputation system, you think of like Red Dead 2's honor system, or heck, even Watch Dogs vigilante meter thing. In Watch Dogs Legion, we got a big thumbs up or thumbs down thing for everyone. They either like, dislike, or really dislike DedSec. This reputation system isn't nearly as good as the aforementioned Red Dead 2 honor system. I think it does the job, but it really starts to show how bare bones this game is. Here, it's just like, oh, me like, or me no like DedSec. So for those who dislike or hate DedSec, you have to do like an extra little quest for... these are usually Albion Guards or Clan Kelly goons. These are the villain gangs in the game, and the only two types of enemy. These extra mission objectives are literally just look on the schedule, then download a file from some sort of enemy hideout thing, which is usually Guy's Hospital. I swear to God, I go there every time I need to recruit someone who doesn't like DedSec. It's ridiculous, man. So that reputation system out of the way, I guess. Let's move on to the people themselves. So at E3 for the game, they showed an old granny you could play as. At which point I was like, wow, you can actually play as loads of people. This seems epic in concept, but when you get into the game and realise that after walking about as an old bloke or lady, it's totally impractical and they're just going to get arrested or killed almost immediately. But you don't have to play as pensioners, so let's talk about everyone. There are quite a few types of people you can play as, my favourite being the Hitman. By the way, you should watch my Hitman videos, they're probably good. My playlist should be somewhere on the cards or something, thanks. Anyhow, it's pretty sick being able to play as loads of types of people. Your team can hold up to 50 people, which is better than I thought it would be, but it still could be improved. It would have been very nice if it could be like 100 or something, but I guess the game would have like an aneurysm if that was gonna happen, so I'll let it slide. And I've maxed out my team once, but you can retire operatives to free up space on your team. So let's talk about the types of people you can play as. You can go as plumbers, politicians, news reporters, spies, weapon dealers, coke dealers, the police. Walter fucking White! The types of people you can play as is literally endless. All of this stuff seems cool. I was excited for it. I thought Ubisoft had put loads of effort into making every person unique. But why do you think they only showed us one guy and one lady at E3? Because instead of millions of unique characters, we have 2 motion captures for each gender. One for every able-bodied man and one for every old man. Then you have 1 motion capture for every able-bodied woman and 1 for elderly woman. So that's like 4 motion captures like throughout the whole game. It's ridiculous. When you play as more than one person, you realise they all run and walk exactly the same. Most of them even stand in the same way. There's nothing unique about anyone. They're just bits of code. If you think you're going to get a fully fleshed out character for every person, you've been catfished by the game like I have. I understand that to make the game easier to make and manage that to limit the voice actors and motion captures, but it's far too limited. Let me vent about the voice acting for a minute. This links in perfectly with my previous point. There's nothing unique about each character. They're all randomly generated from the hair to the face, clothes, and most annoyingly the voice. All of the voices, apart from maybe one or two, are actually good.
We're stuck. We need help.
Son of a fuck. Don't worry. We will get your friends his drugs.
There are about 20 voice actors for each gender. There's a lot of Cockneys, a few posh people, like 5 roadmen, 1 Irish, 1 Scottish, 2 to 3 Russians, 1 or 2 Indians, 2 or 3 Jamaicans. That doesn't seem bad until you get in-game and recruit two people who have a similar racial profile or physical stature. And then you realise they both have the same voice actor.
To fight back for this city. Are you a part of DedSec? Perhaps you could help me.
The racial profile in this game is unfucking believable. I saw a black gentleman in the game who has some quality weapons. I was like, oh cool, I'll recruit him. And hopefully he doesn't have the same Jamaican voice actor like the rest of my team. So I go to recruit him, and what do I know? He has the same shit voice actor as the rest of the gentlemen on my team.
But he can't get no help from National Health.
As another example, I saw a pale ginger man, and what do you know? He has an Irish voice actor. The way Ubisoft pins people with a voice actor based on their looks is really bad and actually quite racist. Hashtag cancel Ubisoft Toronto. It's shit like this that completely breaks the immersion of the game, because apart from that, the people, when you aren't playing as them, don't look too computerized. They behave somewhat like normal human beings. It's no way near as good as Watch Dogs 2's AI, but I think it's better than the first game. And 90% of the British voice actors are absolutely hideous. They all sound like caricatures. They nearly all sound goddamn awful. I understand that the big no-no virus might have affected some production shit, but the game was meant to be released in March of 2020, just before all the virus shit really hit the fan. I think that's all I have to say about recruitment and stuff, but I'll come back to customization and shit later. Graphics is where the game really shines. The graphics as a whole are gorgeous. The environment looks sick, nighttime looks especially impressive. Piccadilly Circus at night looks like COD Modern Warfare, it's pretty sick. Puddles and lights, even on my Xbox One X on my shitty 24-inch TV, looks amazing. The people look pretty good. I mean, with the core gameplay mechanic being play as everyone, the people have to look. I don't think Ubisoft go for photorealism with their character models, but the details on the face and clothes look pretty good. I can't work out exactly why the character models don't look real, but I don't really mind. I guess the art style of the game engine doesn't really give the same photorealism as other games. Where the graphics take a step back is the water. The water simulation doesn't look good at all. It moves and reacts weirdly to the objects and people. The water in Watch Dogs 2 looks really good, and this game's water manages to look worse than the first game's water. That covers graphics, I think. Guns, progression, inventory and abilities, that's encapsulated in this section. This is the thing that pushed us to make the video. So basically you have 2 weapon slots and 1 gadget slot, so let's compare that to the weapon wheel that has been implemented since the first game. In the first game you could carry every weapon you own, or like all types of weapons. In the first game you had a gun shop where you could buy, you guessed it, guns. In the second game, there wasn't gun shops, rather a 3D printer that somehow prints weapons. The printer gave you options for lethal and non-lethal weapons. The options were even better than the first game. As well as this, you could carry remotely detonated bombs and grenades that could be hacked as double as proximity grenades and could attract enemies. There were mass vehicle hacks to move cars out the way. This is implemented in Legion, but only for Getaway Driver. There was a blackout hack in the first 2 games. This would shut off all technology in the city. In the second game, you were equipped with an RC car and a drone to make spooky "I spotted a clown from my drone at 3 AM videos. In Legion, you have the aforementioned gadget slot and 2 gun slots. The gun slots for the majority of people can be filled with a stun gun to start. The stun gun is possibly the worst gun in the Watch Dogs franchise. The average enemy takes 6 to 8 bullets to incapacitate, by which point they have sounded the alarm and every fucker in a 10-mile radius are equipped with light machine guns waiting to kill you. Even with the suppressor attachment that you can equip later, everyone still knows where you are. In Watch Dogs 2, the stun gun was 1 shot. If the unconscious body was found by a fellow enemy, they could be woken up. Alternatively, they could wake up after a few minutes, I think it was 3 minutes. An example of good balancing in a game. There are more weapons in Watch Dogs Legion. With the green dot upgrades things, you can buy shotgun and grenade launchers that are unlocked for everyone. These weapons are also trash. They're loud, impractical, and have very low amounts of ammo. Some people have different weapons. For example, a hitman has a Desert Eagle and an assault rifle. A spy has a silenced pistol. A beekeeper has a honey blaster thing. These special weapons are sick, much better than the base weapons. The problem is that you can't use these with your base characters. There's one character that I have who owns a DedSec assault rifle, which you think could be used by everyone, as if they're left with the good weapons, while the people who aren't hitmen or weapons dealers are left with the crap base weapons. This begs the question, why would I want to play as anyone else? If you get into a gunfight with someone who doesn't have an assault rifle, you'll die or be arrested. People without good weapons, more often than not, rendered useless. You may have a brilliant person with good hacking abilities or is strong in combat situations, but because they're a chef, they can't wield an AK-47. You may think,
wait, that makes no sense. Why would a chef wield an AK-47?
Why wouldn't the moral code allow them to use a high caliber assault rifle? Yet you can use a grenade launcher that explodes cars and people in an instant. By the way, I don't want to use the grenade launcher because it has like 6 grenades, and once they're out you have no reason to use it. And the gadget system is just as bad. You can choose one gadget. One. It's absolute crap compared to the amount you could carry in Watch Dogs 2. The options are so limited as well. There's the spider bot. There's a spider bot with a shit gun, an electrocution grenade thing, and a thing that punches one hit, and there's an invisibility cloak from Harry Potter. The only ones that are actually good are the cloak and the spider bot. What confuses is that why the spider bot has to be one of your gadgets. In Watch Dogs 2, you had a drone and an RC car. Some of the choices they made in this game are just so dumb. In terms of progression, there was no skill tree as seen in the previous games. Instead, we have upgrades which are bought with tech points. These are scattered all around the map and each award 10 points. They're also awarded by completing story missions. There are very few unlockable hacks and gadgets, and I much prefer a good old-fashioned skill tree. Gameplay is a bit of a mixed bag. On the one hand, we finally have a dedicated crouch button, which is something every Watch Dogs fan has wanted since the first game. We've got it here and it's pretty good. It's nice to crouch whenever you want instead of it being automatic. The cover system is pretty good. The new combat system suits the atmosphere of the game pretty well. It's a basic combat system with 2 attacks and a dodge. Nothing amazing, it doesn't really play all that well, but it's something. The increase in combat mechanic really does draw away from the hacking, because that should be the epicenter of the game. Watch Dogs 2 made sure hacking was the main tool of the game, and the combat was only used to get out of a tricky situation. So in combat situations, more often than not, you would die or come very close to dying. Even in combat situations, hacking was at the forefront. It felt amazing to set up explosive traps with shock grenades or the electric boxes that could be found in gang hideouts. Gameplay encouraged you to think and rewarded stealth. In Legion, combat and shooting is promoted more than hacking. It's hard to be stealthy because of the drones that are always flying around. The longer kill time makes the player focus on killing people rather than the actual objective. In Watch Dogs 2 there was a melee option, knocked or killed the enemy. It was quiet, relatively quick, and ensured the objective was still the main focus. Watch Dogs Legion has its benefits, like the ability to shroud. This is an unlockable skill we'll talk more about shortly, but shrouding allows dead or unconscious bodies to be camouflaged into the environment. It's features like this that made me realise how good this game could have been. There are some solid ideas and foundations in this game that aren't really explored. So let's discuss a few gameplay features that ultimately left the game feeling shallow. Firstly is a feature you would think would be essential for a game about hacking. A feature that was in the first Watch Dogs game in 2014. This feature was also in GTA 5, a game that isn't remotely about hacking. In both Watch Dogs game, there's always been a phone. It was nothing amazing in the first game, but it was a unique way to implement the skill tree, song sneak, challenge screens and such. In the second game, the phone was a way to get to the map using a Google Maps spoof. It also had the skill tree, challenges, online features and game settings. Legion does not have a phone screen. Instead, we got a basic inventory map, skill, tree and operatives page. Nearly every open world game has this feature nowadays. Assassin's Creed Valhalla, another shit game from Ubisoft, has the exact same layout. It's really disappointing because the phone could have been a really cool feature in the game. For example, when switching operatives, instead of going to the team page, you could call up your operative and then go like,
I'm done for today, can't be asked, your turn now, lol.
From there we would zoom out for a split second to see the whole map from a bird's eye view. The camera then travels over to the operative and then you play as them, kind of like the GTA 5 thing where you switch from Franklin to like Trevor or something. Ubisoft could have made the recruitment really stylistic. Instead, when you switch operatives, you have to go to the team page, hold down X on the operative you want to switch to, and then watch a loading screen for 30 seconds. If we have to wait half a minute to use the main gameplay feature that you've been bragging about since E3 2019, at least make it stylised. And even if they've never planned on implementing the phone, they could have at least made the inventory screen interesting. It could have been customisable, it could have, like, it be DedSec themed. Instead, we have the most basic screen you could imagine. Instead of trying to establish interesting features other than play as everyone, Ubisoft went for the most basic approach possible. It's worth noting that unlike the previous two games, you cannot hack traffic lights anymore. I don't know why, but you can't hack traffic lights like you could 7 years ago. Another feature that is missing is the music. In both the Watch Dogs game, there's a music player app. This is filled with loads of great songs and some real bangers in the mix. The first game had that Day and Night thing, you know, the meme song. Day and Night. In Watch Dogs 2, the music was really good with some absolute bangers in there. All the music was categorised into its respective genre. Songs could be favourited and you can make your own playlists. Ubisoft created a small-scale Spotify replica in their own game. That's the kind of shit that made Watch Dogs 2 stand out. All we get in Legion is 5 or 6 radio stations that are meant to have British tunes on. One of which is Football's Coming Home. You know that footy chant we all sang when the World Cup was on? Ubisoft think that we Brits have football songs at the fucking radio 24/7. There are loads more stereotypes that I'll talk about a bit later. The songs that are on the radio are so limited it doesn't equate to the music player we had in 2014. Another feature that is missing is Cars on Demand. Another feature that was in 2014's Watch Dogs 2 from 2016. Cars on Demand is pretty self-explanatory. It's kind of like in Forza, where you order a car, or in GTA, where you order a car. You could purchase or unlock every type of vehicle and order to your location. This feature does exist in a sense because some people in London have special vehicles that you can summon to your location, and I get what they were going for with it, but for me this removes an interesting feature from the game that makes the franchise feel disjointed and inconsistent. What Ubisoft could have done is kept Car on Demand for everyone, but allowed the people with unique vehicles to order theirs in. No one else could order in their special vehicle. I thought I'd bundle in driving with this gameplay instead of making a whole other category for it. The driving is better than Watch Dogs 1, but I prefer Watch Dogs 2 driving. The handling is pretty much the same on all the cars. Larger vehicles like trucks and vans are a bit different, but that's expected. Bikes now absolute crap to drive. It's hard to stay on the bike, and when you're going at a high speed. They used to be my favourite type of vehicle in the first two Watch Dogs games. And because of the way London is, with its tight streets and such, the max speed of the cars has been lowered. I don't know for a fact, but cars definitely feel slower. Also, there aren't many types of vehicles at all. There are not many cars. I reckon there's no more than 20. This doesn't seem bad, but there was far more than this in the other two games. To make matters worse, when travelling through London, you just see the same cars over and over again. There are 2 types of motorcycle. This includes the scooter. Watch Dogs and Watch Dogs 2 each had at least 5 types of bikes. There are 2 to 3 vans, 2 or 3 Clan Kelly vehicles, 2 or 3 Albion vehicles, and an ambulance. Oh, and there are no fire trucks. Apparently, in the near future, the fire service does not exist. You could argue that there is a drone that does the fire service's job, perhaps. No such thing exists. There is no drone or Albion officer equipped with a hose. This lack of detail makes the game feel really flat and uninteresting. Now, let me mention Albion really quick. I didn't know when to mention this, so I'll just talk about it now. Albion are the dumbest police force in video game history. I struggled more to evade the police in Simpsons Hit and Run. I can escape Albion in a matter of 30 seconds, no matter the crime. I can punch an old lady in the face, or I could blow up several cars with my grenade launcher, and I would only get a 2 triangle rating. I was trying to do an Xbox achievement where you had a 5 triangle wanted level and evade the police while posing as a living statue. I could not do it. I spent 25 minutes causing absolute carnage and I only reached 4 triangles. I couldn't get the highest wanted level, even with a 4 triangle rating. Fuck this, I'm calling it stars. Even with a 4-star wanted level, I escaped the police in less than a minute. And I don't even get why Albion is a thing. Just give us the Metropolitan Police, please. It would have been sick to drive around in a beautiful looking police car with the quality graphics. The closest thing you can achieve is this grey piece of shit. The story kicks off whether you're playing as a spy called like Gregory or something, I don't know. You have a woman yelling down your gamer headset telling you what to do. This lady's kind of a bitch and she's posh. I kind of hate women. This is a tutorial level basically. It's where you realise that the controls are possibly the worst they've ever been. You then realise that you can change each control, which is pretty neat. The one redeeming quality of this game. The only reason I'm not giving this game a 0 out of 10 is because they have custom control settings. Well done Ubisoft. 10 out of 10. Game of the year. Then you get to the roof of Parliament and try and defuse a bomb, to then realise there's been multiple set off around the city. Jinkies. Then you choose your first operative, and if you're as dumb as I am, you'll pick the worst voice acted operative in the game. Nice. To be honest, I can't really recall much of the story, so I'm just going to talk about the villains. There's the big baddie who set off all the bombs. They're called Zero Day. It's here that I'm going to give you a spoiler warning, but you probably won't need it, because after watching this video you're probably not going to purchase the game. But Zero Day don't do anything in the game at all until the end, end of the story, where you realise, oh shit, the leader of the terrorist organisation is actually the leader of DedSec from the beginning. This reveal is kind of shitty and I wasn't really shocked by it at all. Zero Day barely had anything to do with the plot and it was a waste of potential for a good villain or enemy group. And I was shocked by how little effect they had in the plot, because nearly all of the Watch Dogs Legion marketing running up to the release showcased a big terrorist organisation who set off bombs all around London. This is some dark shit that could have led to some interesting characters in the world. When profiling, I expected something to say the relative or friend had been killed in these bombings. And therefore, if you wanted to recruit them, they could have a vendetta against Zero Day. This would create some, dare I say it,
Character personality.
I expected there to be some Zero Day enemies, like a cult following or something. But from playing through the story, all I could gather was that Sabine was the one and only member of this big-ass terrorist group. Zero Day could have presented some interesting missions or characters, but Ubisoft missed the mark. Speaking of which, there are a few other enemies in the game. There's Nigel Cass, the leader of Albion. He's just a prick, I think. He's not a nice fella at all. I remember it took us a matter of 10 seconds to kill him in the big boss battle.
Time to end this.
I could have made your death easy. You had to force my hand. You had to interfere in my...
Then there's Mary Kelly, the leader of the Clan Kelly gang. She does some human trafficking shit or modern day slavery stuff. She deals human organs and the voice actor is pretty good. A pretty compelling villain. There's a reporter guy who's a bit of an arsehole, and by the end you put him in a DedSec prison. And if I remember rightly, even 5 months after completing the story, he's still in the prison cell. It's kind of messed up. For social justice warriors like DedSec, it's not very nice to lock someone up in your underground hideout without any trial or anything. I honestly don't remember much about him other than he did some double-crossing shit. And the fifth and final villain is probably the most compelling. Sky Larson created the AI for this future version of London. She created the AI that is present throughout the whole story, Bagley. Bagley is the AI that tells you what to do and how to do it and comes up with funny ha-ha quips, and it's really British. This AI was almost essential with how the game's constructed. Because there's no main character, Bagley acts as a constant through all of the operatives you can switch to, and really grounds the absurdity that is play as everyone. Anyhow, Sky Larson has her own personal AI you can investigate and eventually find out is her mother. Little Miss AI Builder converted the mind of her mother into a bunch of ones and zeros. The whole mission's kind of dark, and this villain was by far the most compelling. I wish there were more missions regarding her, because by the end of her part of the story, I was left wondering if she could have been the main villain of the game. This kind of villain is perfect for a game about hacking. I wish Ubisoft had lent more into using villains with a hacking or technology-based plot. It was times like this when I enjoyed the game, then got frustrated because I realised the Watch Dogs Legion plot has a lot of potential, and villains like Sky Larson shone amongst the 4 other villains that had very little to do with the technology and hacking. There were a police force, a gang, a one-woman terrorist organisation, and a dodgy journalist. All of these villains leave the plot feeling disjointed and confusing. You defeat one villain and then the next one and then the next one until the story kind of ends. Bagley dies at the end. That's another spoiler warning, whoops. He sacrifices himself to save London or something. Gotta be honest, when I first played through I was impressed by the balls Ubisoft had of the game's driving force to control or delete himself at the end. I was momentarily shocked until the credits finished, and guess what? Bagley comes back. I sighed when this happened, but because what could have been an interesting plot twist just twisted itself back. Instead of doing some ballsy stuff like killing off Bagley for good, Ubisoft realised, oh shit, we need this AI for the player to continue playing the game. If he died, how would the player recruit more people or complete the 2 available side missions? So after Bagley comes back, you do a mission for him and find his body or something. And it turns out that he used to be Sky Larson's sister, who took his brain out and put it in a computer disk drive to create an AI that calls people pricks all the time. This twist was kinda cool, and the missions weren't half bad, but this could have been easily bundled in with the Sky Larson section of the story and made a really interesting plot. What would have been interesting if Bagley actually died in the end, and then you choose one of the operatives to take on the role of like the DedSec leader or something. This is something that would have been really sick, and you could feel the full weight of Bagley's death. The player grows to like Bagley somewhat, but then he dies for the sake of dying. It was obvious they didn't want him to stay dead, so the question stands, why kill him off at all? Overall, the story has 1 or 2 shining moments with a few unique missions and features, but ultimately falls flat on most fronts. There are missions to unlock different boroughs on the map. This featured pretty neat. Each borough has a mission to do. These are some of the best missions in the game, and it utilises all the features of the game well. Once you've completed the missions, that borough will no longer be oppressed. This means that there will be less Albion presence in that area, and there will be less Albion propaganda, and there won't be any Albion checkpoints or anything. And also you get a unique operative. These are pretty cool. There's a spy, a beekeeper, a hitman, a football fan, a hacker, and a getaway driver. The whole feature's pretty neat, and it matches the theme of the game perfectly. Once these missions are done, the game loses its futuristic oppression thing. If there was more missions like this, I wouldn't have had a problem with the amount of content, but once these missions are done, there's barely anything left to do. Now let's discuss the side content, or rather lack thereof it. Watch Dogs suffered from the copy and paste treatment, with nearly all of the mainstream side missions being similar, fun but repetitive. Where the first Watch Dogs game shone was digital trips. These were ultimately some of the best side content I've played in a game thus far. Watch Dogs 2 had a ton of things to do: drone, bike, sailboat, go-kart and car races. Drive as San Francisco is like an Uber service that offers unique encounters and gameplay experiences. There's also a wide range of missions that can be found in the DedSec app that are each quite unique. Legion has kick-ups, keepy-ups with your football, package delivery, fighting and darts. That's it. Kick-ups is entertaining for all of 10 minutes. The package delivery suffers from a copy and paste syndrome and is fun until you realise that there are only about 3 mission types. One where you deliver the package without damage in it, one where you do it in a time frame, and one where you evade Albion goons. If you count collecting tech points as a side mission, I suppose that is, but there's no real point in doing it after you've finished the upgrade board, which doesn't really take long to complete. The fighting is probably the most fun and good for mastering the combat mechanics. Once you know how the game mechanics work, you have no reason to go and fight unless you're in desperate need for the 300 ETO you get for completing it. That's another thing I'm annoyed about. Instead of using Great British Quid, Ubisoft decided to make a whole new currency. Anyway, back to the side content. Darts is darts. It's more difficult when you're drunk in the game, which by the way only takes 1 drink. I don't know one Brit who's ever drank 1 pint and gotten drunk. Getting blackout only takes about 5 drinks, which might be all it takes for a Yankee Doodle Dandy, but for British folk, you've got to give us a few more than 5. And that's really it for side content. Technically, you can keep recruiting people, but with only 50 spots on your team, it isn't really possible. And your operatives that you've recruited have nothing to do once you finish the story. There might be some content in the season pass, so let's have a look. June? Aiden Pierce and Wrench DLC that was promised isn't coming out till 8 months after the game was released. Currently, the season pass owners like me have received 2 missions. 2. They've took me all of an hour to complete. 5 months after the game was released, we only have 2 paid missions. All you gain from it are 3 potential recruits that are amateur hackers. The Assassin's Creed crossover isn't happening until late August, nearly a year after its initial release. And I guarantee this will be pushed back by at least a month. I'm just going to quickly mention customization. The clothes and accessories are actually pretty good. Loads of potential for customising your operatives. I'm going to talk about the map real quick. This is the actual map feature that I'm talking about, and I'll get another location in a sec. The map is basic and bad. It would be nice to know which shops were on the map. Instead, all we'll get is shops, so you just have to guess which shops are where. Apart from that, it looks totally shit. The game is basic, and the icons are stupid. Please redesign the map UI, Ubisoft, please. Let's discuss London. London would have been the perfect place for a game about hacking, right? One of, if not the most surveyed cities in the world. Tailor-made for a game where hacking security cameras is one of the main features of the Watch Dogs franchise. However, for me at least, the location doesn't work. Firstly, it's too small. Imagine playing GTA, but you can only use Los Santos city area, just the cramped city. Don't get me wrong, the environment looks amazing, as I mentioned in the graphics section, but to me it just looks all too similar. It's hard to distinguish one borough from another. I keep bringing up Watch Dogs 2, but in Watch Dogs 2 the San Francisco Bay Area is diverse and detailed. The city feels dynamic and lived in. It feels real and but has fun personality. The colours are bright, maybe too bright sometimes, but in Legion the map is limited and bland. When playing Watch Dogs 2 I spent time exploring the environment, witnessing unique events and conflicts, reading the text messages on people's phones. In Legion, all you get is people walking and occasionally they're on the phone, engaging in one of the few programmed voice lines. The special recruits like spies or hitmen will stand in the same spots no matter what, so if you need one, they'll be in that spot. Everyone in London has the exact same body type. There isn't one person who is slightly overweight or slightly smaller than everyone else. This also makes the open world seem less palpable. London itself is also really bland. With it being in a big city, the entire map is one level and it's really flat. In the previous two Watch Dogs games there were motorways, cliffs, woodland areas, beaches. With London being London, there's none of this. It's all set in the busy city and crowded boroughs. Without previous knowledge of London, I think it will be hard to distinguish one part of the map from another. I certainly struggle. One of the most unique features of London is the tube. Guess what? It isn't in Legion. You can use it as fast travel, but you can't see or get in a tube. The London Underground would give the map a whole lot more depth. Imagine running through the tube stations away from Albion guards, sliding down that bit between like the escalators, then hopping on a tube, or a mission where the tube stops and you have to hack stuff to make it work again. Push an enemy onto the tracks for a unique kill. All we get is a gate to the underground and you can't go any further. Even if the tube wasn't a feature, the abandoned underground would have made a really unique arena on another headquarters. Speaking of which, there's only one HQ in the whole map. Granted, the map is tiny compared to the other open world games, but surely, where the game is about players everyone, one HQ that is the size of a studio apartment isn't enough to gather all the members of DedSec. The map size is a real issue. With how small the map is, there isn't any variety as I mentioned, but Ubisoft could have expanded the map for more interesting locations. I'm pretty sure there were some places that aren't too far from the centre of London that have grassy areas. I get sick to death of staring at the dull pavement in Legion. Please give us some variety of environments. A welcome addition to the map would have been bicycles, skateboards, or a futuristic alternative. Cycling is a valid method of transport in London, as the roads are always packed. It would have made the game a little bit more light-hearted to oppose the mainly ominous tone the game emits. There is a cargo drone that you can be used. It was highly promoted in all the trailers and adverts, but it's kind of shit. It's so slow, not only in speed, but the way it handles. I find myself rarely using one. I only really use it to get to high ground, but guess what? There's a height limit for a thing, and it's ridiculously low. It would have been nice to fly higher than Big Ben or the Houses of Parliament, but once again, Ubisoft disappoints. In terms of buildings and interiors, this game once again disappoints. I'm going to address my biggest gripe with this matter firstly. You can no longer go into clothes shops, something that you've been able to do in any open world game for about the last decade. You can't go into clothes shops, you instead stand outside and buy clothes from a screen. It makes no sense. I don't care how far in the future this is, you can't retrieve clothes from a screen. There are pubs you can enter, and of course you can go in, hide out in enemy buildings, but that's pretty much it for the extent of interiors. You can't go into Buckingham Palace like you might have hoped for or expected. There are no longer cafes or pawn shops. A few small additions to the game would have made it so much more detailed. Now time for the time setting. This game is set in the not too distant future. By my estimations, I think it's set in the 2030s to 40s. I don't care about this time setting. It's not set in the 3000s, so it limits creative potential. It's not set in the present either, so I can't relate to it. It's not far enough in the future for me to care, and it's not set now so I can't relate to scenarios or technologies. If this game was set even 50 years in the future, this would be much more interesting. There will probably be flying vehicles, hoverboards and robots. When the game is set about 10 years from now, we'll get self-driving cars and probably the new iPhone. With the time setting set a bit further into the future, Ubisoft could have made the world really unique. They could have made some meaningful changes to the environment. There could have been new buildings, some buildings or landmarks that have been totally destroyed or abandoned. There could have been more holograms, robots and so on. Let's think of some good time settings for game. Cyberpunk 2077 was so hyped up because of all the futuristic concepts and of course Keanu Reeves. Obviously this game turned out to be a total disaster, but people were obviously excited due to the time setting and the amount of potential creative freedom. Both of the Red Dead Redemption games were set in the past. People like Red Dead games because it was something different. It allows them to explore an environment and a narrative that they can't experience in their own lives. In Watch Dogs Legion, we're stuck with a few minor changes to the map and gameplay that have very little to no impact on the gameplay experience. It would have been better to set the game in the present so that people can relate to the experiences they have in-game. This game is set in a time where no one cares. If it was set in the present, people can relate to the world and characters. But a game that's set 10 or so years from now is uninteresting. It's not set in the future or the past, so people aren't gripped by the setting and unique gameplay experiences attached to it. After another disaster in the Watch Dogs franchise, I'm not sure if we'll see another one. However, there's so many bad Assassin's Creed games and they're still being shit out every year, so you never know. Watch Dogs might keep going. If there is another one, I'll do some extensive research before spending 70 quid on it. To be honest, I think I've lost faith in one of my favourite game series. Now for my final score. Fuck this, man. It's a 2 out of 10. Bad game. Really bad. Seriously though, if you have watched this far into the video, thank you very much. This video took a lot of work, but I hope it turned out okay. I need to rest now. This video is really long and I'm tired. See you later. Bye.